In the Gospel of St. Matthew, we are told, "At midnight there was a cry, 'Behold, the bridegroom cometh.'" In Christ's parable of the 10 virgins, we are offered a picture of vigilance, a preparation not just for the arrival of a figure, but for the presence of truth, for judgment, for something real. But what if the figure who comes is not the bridegroom at all? What if he is a counterfeit? One who imitates tradition, speaks the language of memory, and performs the gestures of reverence, but whose arrival brings not joy but distortion. In our cultural moment, that counterfeit has a name. He is the Kitschmensch, a first name by Hermann Broch and sharpened by Roger Scruton. He is not marked by overt falsehood or rebellion. On the contrary, he appeals to our sense of the familiar. He offers the echo of spiritual depth, the appearance of beauty, the sentimental gestures of meaning, but without their moral weight. He is the self we recognize in a culture shaped by emotional ease and aesthetic fraudulence. This is not a call for cynicism, nor a lament from the sidelines. It is an invitation to judge more clearly, to feel more rightly, and to recover the spiritual seriousness that art and culture require of us. Scruton once described kitsch as the art produced by someone who has no idea of what art is, of its expressive and spiritual potential, but who seeks, by artistic means, to falsify reality and to conform a habit of emotional laziness. This, he warned, is not mere bad taste. It is pseudo-art, a counterfeit that pretends to a status that it cannot earn. It deals not in lies, but in the distortion of meaning. It makes emotion easy, sentiment instant, and aesthetic comfort available without cost. Kitsch, he wrote, reflects our spiritual waywardness and our failure not only to value the human spirit, but also to perform those sacrificial acts which create the human spirit from the constant flux of nature. End quote. At the heart of this failure is a confusion about sentiment. Modern culture often dismisses sentiment as softness, but Scruton, following Edmund Burke and Russell Kirk, understood that our affections are not obstacles to truth, they are the precondition for it. For Burke, the moral imagination is the faculty through which we see others and ourselves within an order of meaning. It allows us to revere what is noble, cherish what is beautiful, and feel allegiance to the dead and the unborn. It is through our sentiments, properly trained, that we come to belong. But sentiment must be distinguished from sentimentality. Scruton, drawing on Broch, defines sentimentality not as too much feeling, but as displaced feeling. Quote, the desire for the glory of some heroic or transfiguring passion without the cost of feeling it, end quote. It is a simulation of emotion, a momentary performance of empathy or reverence, which requires no sacrifice and carries no judgment. When art indulges this dynamic, it ceases to form. It becomes a product designed to flatter the viewer rather than elevate him. In this sense, kitsch is not the rejection of beauty, but its imitation. It flatters beauty while emptying it of any seriousness. A kitsch monument, for instance, invites patriotic feeling, but frees us from historical knowledge. A kitsch culture tells us that we care for and are aware of the marginalized, but requires none of the burden of charity or justice. Just a filtered post, a black square, a slogan, a nice mural in town. The response is engineered and the depth is absent. The result is not trivial. Scruton warned that the emergence of the Kitschmensch on the stage of history was no coincidence. Quote, it is no accident, he wrote, that the arrival of the Kitschmensch coincided with the hitherto unimaginable horrors of trench warfare, of the Holocaust and of the Gulag. The transformation of the human being into a doll, which in one moment we cover with kisses, and in the next moment we tear to pieces with a disgusted shrug, end quote. That same aesthetic that permits us to feel quickly without costs permits us also to discard with indifference. But emotion without judgment is not a virtue, it is a danger. Nor is kitsch confined to any one political tendency. It flourishes in progressive iconography, as I just mentioned. These monuments to abstraction and activist installations that confuse emotional charge with moral weights, and in curation that replaces art with slogans. But it also tempts the right. There is a conservatism that quotes the past without renewing it, that confuses reverence with replication. Sentiment, if untested, turns saccharine. But we see it in the soft focus idols of Thomas Kincaid, or in the rise of some of these stranger and new hyper-realistic monuments and sculptures where every muscle and gesture is over-determined, figures so strained in their symbolism that they feel theatrical, unmoored from a quiet dignity that they aim to portray. These are not failures of style so much as of confidence, a retreat into exaggeration when sincerity feels too risky. The danger is not representational art, but loss of what art is meant to represent. This is where the deeper problem lies. The danger is not simply in poor taste, but this insincerity. For Scruton, sincerity was the test of any art. Art is the final test of sincerity, he wrote. It is the one thing that cannot be faked. To create a true work of art, you need deep convictions. Kitsch fails this test, not because it lacks skill, but because it lacks this sacrifice. It gives us this beauty without difficulty, without feeling, without formation. The Kitschmensch is, of course, sincere in his performance, but the performance is all he has. So what, then, is the alternative? We do not need iconoclasm, nor do we need to retreat into irony or self-aware quotation. The answer is not to make fun of kitsch, or perhaps not only to make fun of kitsch, nor to fear it, but simply to outgrow it. And that, Scruton argues, requires a genuine spiritual vision. Art must begin again from seriousness, from attention, and from form. This is a task of education, of culture, and of the soul. It is not simply enough to repeat inherited forms. We must restore their meaning. And that doesn't mean retreating into the past or parroting visual language of tradition, but it means recovering what Scruton, echoing Eliot, saw as the true role of tradition, a presence. The historical sense, Eliot wrote, involves a perception not only of the pastness of the past, but of its presence. Tradition is not the repetition of what tradition is not the repetition of what was once beautiful. It is the source of meaning that enables a new beauty to arise. Now, this will not be easy. Scruton never promised that it would be. In fact, he praised Eliot for embracing the difficulty, quoting from the four quartets. There is only the fight to recover what has been lost, and found and lost again and again, now under the conditions that seem unpropitious. In the face of unpropitious conditions, we are not asked to despair. We are asked to begin and begin again. To speak of kitsch is not to nitpick or fall back into elite culture. It is to recognize the stakes of our cultural moment. For a people formed by sentimentality will not know how to suffer nobly, to aspire toward the eternal, or to endure what is difficult but good. They will ask only to be moved, and they will be moved by whatever flatters them. But the conservative task, if it is worthy to be of that name, is not to flatter but to form, not to perform reverence but to renew it. That requires more than the revival of certain styles. It requires the recovery of sincerity, of sacrifice, and of the spiritual depth that makes culture endure. As the Scruton family motto reminds us, scrutare semper, scrutinize always. That is our inheritance and our calling, to see clearly, to feel rightly, and to build what lasts. Thank you.
Thank you, Fisher.